This is something that holds us, where our mission is to bring people closer to their emotions through conversations about our life experiences to understand not only who we are, but who we want to be. Today, I have joining me.
Ashley Hampton.
Thank you for joining me, Ashley.
Hi, Ryan. How are you?
I'm doing very well. I start this podcast off with something that I stole from our place of employment, a community meeting.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, you know how it goes. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling a little nervous,
Scale of 1 to 10.
like a 4.
Oh, just a little bit. That's not
Just a
bad.
little bit, yeah.
No need for me to check back in on
Oh,
that.
I think it's like that good middle anxiety thing, where you just start to grow, right? When you realize, okay, I can do this.
Yeah, this is a growth moment, growth experience.
Mm-hmm.
What is your goal for today or this week?
For today to participate in my first podcast,
Who can you ask for help?
I can ask you.
You know I got you.
Thank you.
Could you tell me one fact about yourself?
Um, I'm a black woman.
That's a big fact.
Mm-hmm.
How does being a black woman play into who you are?
Oh, every minute of every day. I mean, I think I get to be brown, which I think is really fun. And I think it comes with a responsibility um, and a self awareness, a constant self awareness that you have to have when you're in public.
Is that ever tiring?
Yeah, yeah, exhausting sometimes. But God has blessed me so much. So if that's something that I have to continue to navigate, I'm happy to do that.
That's beautiful. Um, what does community mean to you?
I mean, I have a few communities, which I'm really grateful for. My home community that I grew up in. I grew up in Stratford, and so like through time and conversations and relationships, I've forged some really good relationships there, and so I get to participate in community. What do you call it? Like community-based organizations. I get to sit on a couple of boards in Stratford, and I love going to the beach in Stratford and um, patronizing local businesses and all that good stuff. So I'm very grateful for the community I have in Stratford. And then also, I'm grateful for the community, my work community in Stamford, which is an interesting thing when you believe and love in the place that you work in, but you don't have like voting rights or you don't have residence there. So I'm also learning to navigate all of that because I really love where I work and I want to be able to be positively influential there.
Okay.
That was a long answer.
That's okay. I like that. I like answers with substance, and you gave me a lot of that. It makes me think about what else I want to ask you about. Where it leads me to two different places. Where would you be willing to share like one of the boards you sit on in Stratford? Like, what does that entail?
Oh,
Like,
Sterling House Community Center. So I actually grew up. That was a large part of my childhood. Um, I would go to karate class there, and I would go to the summer camp there, and the playground. And it was just like a really great place to be because I'm an only child, and so being able to come together with like other young people in my community at that age was so important, and I really loved it. And so years later, I learned that one of the board members was interested in having me join, and I was so honored because I'd never been a board member before, and this was so important to me. And so I've been there for now about a year and a half, and it's just really it's so cool. It's This house is probably 200 years old, and the person who founded it, Cordelia Sterling, she said, which was very progressive for a woman of her time, that she wanted to make sure that this house, if she dedicated it to the town, it was going to be open to children, families, people of all creed, color, race, gender, regardless, and away from any discrimination. And that was progressive for her time. And so the fact that my town has kept her will intact, I think, is very wonderful. And so I'm glad to be a part of the board there.
That's pretty cool. I think about my own personal development. I love what I do for work as well, and having uh, being raised in Stanford and moving out, and like you said, losing all those rights to have a say or a voice in a real way in that same city, it makes me often think about moving back because living in
Mm,
Bridgeport now, I'm not as in sync with the community in Bridgeport, but it is where I live.
yeah.
Um, I still have this desire to make change in Stanford. I don't really have a desire to get to know Bridgeport, even though I know it's this place there that there are people there that I can still help as well. But where you're from is just different, you know.
Yeah, I hear you. And I think the other thing that ties me to Stanford, my dad's family was historically from Stanford. My grandmother came to Stanford when she was 2. She was a member of Union Baptist with Reverend Perry for a very long time. She was there for all of her life.
Oh, those roots run deep.
Hmm. Yeah, and so my family, like all of my, a lot of my, again, my childhood happy memories are tied to that town. Thanksgiving weekends, um, playing out in the street with all the kids, doing all that stuff. So it's nice to be in a community that I remember so fondly.
That's cool. I like you're the second person that has mentioned like the fact that they are part of multiple communities,
Hmm.
and you both have expressed that very elegantly or explained it very elegantly for people to understand. And I guess I need to get better at being able to identify myself with multiple communities and realizing that you don't have to be solely in one place making change. Change can happen anywhere.
Yeah, change can happen anywhere, and um, there is like I think we try to get away from nostalgia or whatever, but there is some there is something gratifying about being connected to something that um, is ingrained in your roots, you know. And so I think people somebody asked me the other day, if you could wake up and be in any place in the world, where would you be? And I said, I think Stratford, Connecticut. Like my mom's here, my community is here, everything's here. I mean, environmentally wise, obviously, I'd want to change, but there's something to be said for feeling for belonging, you know?
Hmm.
And I think belonging is so huge to the human experience.
Yeah. Um, I like you said that, but there's also this. I think I mentioned it before. Something I used to struggle with is, like you said, having a feeling of belonging and coming from a certain place. It's difficult for me, like when working with the kids I work with, and coming from where I come from. We both come from the very same community, where it's an impoverished neighborhood, and often people have to grow, and the goal is to leave it, right?
Mm,
So it's like you never really have this sense of desire to belong to this unless when you do have a desire to belong with the from that neighborhood, it's more so negative characteristics that people try to embody and twist into, oh no, this is where I'm from or this is who we are. Where and then people mention, oh, how you need to let that go in order for you to really grow. But I guess that is part of the reason why I have this infatuation with really changing the Stanford community or those specific areas for better, because I keep seeing like people grow and they constantly leave, you know, because those places aren't necessarily places to, I would say, it's not viewed in a positive light to have generations that live in those neighborhoods.
mm,
But
mm.
that is where, like you said, you have these memories of growing up and being fond of a place. But then you, if you stay there, you're not really viewed as a success. Does that make sense?
It's so interesting that you say that it's not viewed positively to have generations growing up in the same neighborhood, because in other communities that are more affluent, that's what you'd want. You'd want to be able to
Exactly.
retain that wealth and the real estate and the reputations and the place that they come up in.
Hmm.
And so, because you identify with that, right? And so I think I've had the privilege of being able to positively identify with my community, and so to grow up with this mentality that I need to break away with my community. That's a really tough thing to have to battle with, because that's a part of you that you don't that you grow up knowing that you don't want to have a part of your life anymore. And I think that's complicated. That's a very complicated relationship.
Yeah, and
Hmm.
I think about how the certain kids, like we talked, like I just mentioned, like certain kids struggle with that by embracing the negative qualities that say, "Oh no, this is how we live. This is who I am," and trying to spin it so they be a positive characteristic in themselves of being real and all those other negative things, you know.
Hmm.
But I can talk about that forever. But let me go on to ask you, what is the most recent challenge you overcame?
There's been, I mean, there's challenges every day. The most recent challenge I overcame. Um, I mean, I guess the big one would probably be my losing my dad, which was about 3 years ago.
Sorry
Yeah,
for your loss.
thank you. No, I'm very blessed to have had a wonderful, present, working, loving, strong black man as a father for 35 years. So I can't complain.
What are some emotions that went through that? Where you said it's something that you overcame. So what emotions did you have to overcome, and what did you have any strategies or to overcome that?
Yeah, I think when I was going through it, I was thinking that, you know what, the only thing worse than someone dying is watching them suffer. And my dad was a very large personality, big, tall, strong man. He had so many. He was a character. You know, he was a character. And so watching somebody become a former version of themselves physically is really difficult. Um, and I think when you're going through stuff like that, you start to question your own emotions because you remember what it's like to laugh or feel joy or feel happy. And then when you're going through something like that, you don't think you'll ever feel that again. Like you wonder, will I ever really laugh? Like really laugh, you know? Because you kind of put on for a little while. Um, but I have a lot of faith, and I mentioned him before, but I try to walk. I'm not a pious person. Um,
What does pious mean?
Pious meaning like super religious, you know. But I try to keep a close relationship with God, and I think that faith like really got me through it. And so now, again, when you go through something like that, because we were very close, me and my dad. When you go through something like that, and you realize like when somebody loves you that much, or you love somebody that much, that energy just doesn't disappear. And so I would love to see his physical presence, obviously, but um, I don't miss him because he's always with me, you know, and I feel so grateful for that. And so there's a lot of relief and guilt and solace and questioning, and I think at the end of the day, just acceptance and gratitude. Um, you learn a lot through loss. You learn a lot about yourself and about how to be peaceful through loss.
What is the biggest thing you learned through loss,
Um,
or the most meaningful thing?
mm, I think that again, when there's history or feelings or love that's that strong, that energy doesn't go away, and so it's just comforting to know. I think I've learned that we have a lot less sense of what that really looks like. We're just like these. I know it sounds kind of crazy, but we're just like these earthly weird humans, right? That um, try to navigate and understand what's going on. But I think that there's things that are bigger than us that we don't understand, and so accepting that and recognizing that and realizing that there can still be this place in your life for people, even though they aren't physically here. I think that's the biggest lesson I've learned. I get to carry him with me everywhere I go, and other people too that I've lost.
Yeah,
Um,
I like that.
it's a lot bigger than I think any of us can really understand. There's a really good movie, Jodie Foster's in it. It's called Contact.
Contact.
Yeah,
I'll check
and
it out. What's it about?
I'm not really into sci-fi, but it's kind of like science fiction. But the idea is that she starts out being an atheist, and somewhere along the way, her father, who had passed on, comes back to her. This is like a '80s or '90s movie, um, and says like, "I'm trying to create this experience so you understand." You know that I just think that the human experience is unique and different, and we just don't understand everything that's happening around us. And I think that's exciting and hopeful.
It is. I mean, we're just vessels.
Yeah, that's right.
So I'm right there with you. I really feel that.
Yep.
I feel that more so now than ever in my life. And I used to tell somebody this weirdly. I guess this is part of. I don't know if this is a part of me struggling self acceptance and loving myself, but I always viewed like myself as a like it's it's like Brian, and then I'm watching down on this person right now. You know what I mean? Like I make the decisions for me, but this is just my vessel. I gotta sit with that more to explain
Hmm.
it to you in a better
I
way.
understand. Yeah.
But
When you say you struggle with self acceptance, what does that mean for you?
I used to, I say,
Oh, you
but I
used to.
used to definitely. I send like the things that I personally had to deal with in life. I was the things that I had to deal with personally in life. Like I struggled with. Like I recently went through something very real over the summer. You probably don't realize when I wasn't at work for a little bit. Um, I was engaged and I went through that where we were no longer planning to move forward. I struggled with just accepting that as a reality, my health issues as a reality, like and avoiding dealing with that and being scared of what actually was. Um, to thinking when I was younger, like um, dealing with I have a condition called osteogenesis imperfecta.
What is that?
So it's when I was younger, I used to break a lot of bones. Like I've broken both my elbows, I fractured my growth plate in my knee. I had to deal with scoliosis and getting surgery for that. So there's constant things that I felt like, why me in those situations? And it brought me to a place where it's weird. It's like almost negative when I think about like viewing myself outside of this, and going through all that negative stuff made me realize that this is really just my vessel. You know, it's like you saw when you talked about that movie about experiencing things because you have to learn from them, you know?
Hmm.
And those were things that I had to learn from, but I wasn't prepared to really deal with. So I kind of really separated my body and my mental. Um, and it was just something that until it came to a head over the summer where I didn't feel like being here anymore. So I attempted suicide, and I struggled with that. And I'm now in a point though, like those two things are even more in sync for me rather than separating. I've learned to really accept my body and all my physical ailments, and also appreciate mentally who I am and the soul that I have, and really get them in sync to change my mentality in order to put my physical body into its best form.
Yeah.
And they feed into each other. They feed into each other back and forth, you know?
Hmm.
Um, and I don't know. The past 4 months have been the best time of my life.
Yeah.
I can't like, and it comes from real self acceptance,
Yeah.
and dealing with things that I've been dealing with head on, rather than avoiding them and putting it putting it off or pouring myself into other things.
Well, one, thank you so much for sharing that. That's not easy to talk about. I think mental health, I think, is complicated for any person, and I think that for people in the brown and black communities, I think it's even more complex. And being able to talk transparently about suicide and maybe like not even wanting to be here, it's such a beautiful thing to be able to talk about. Obviously it's not a beautiful thing in and of itself, but I think that it's so important because so many people experience that. And so I appreciate you giving that a platform and talking about it and being vulnerable.
Thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
for making me feel comfortable enough to be vulnerable with you.
Yeah. Have you talked about that before?
Personally, like one of like I don't not in that way. I think I've said more now than I've ever said.
Mm.
Um, but I've given people I like I've said like that's I have attempted that and all that other stuff, but not
Mm.
really why and the whole separating myself and accepting my body for who I am now and accepting my mentality and changing my mentality in order to positively affect my body and change my life, you know? And this is,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, this is the platform I want to bring people into feeling vulnerable and sharing their thoughts because it's crazy. Like every one of my friends, I say everyone, but most of the friends that I have and I talk to that are men, I tell them about what happened. They're like, "Oh, I can't believe that was like you went through that, right?"
Mm.
But then when they start talking and they start telling me about how depressed they are, the things that they're struggling with, and I'm like, "This is why I've realized how much power is in my own vulnerability
Mm-hmm.
because they're just hanging on to that, and that stuff that I used to hang on to for years until the point where you're full. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah.
You're full and you explode. And I try to tell my friends, they're like, "Oh, you don't." They're like, "I don't want to burden anybody with my problems." I'm like, "But you're burdening yourself by keeping them to yourself." You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I do. And I think that it's interesting because you got into this place where you were very vulnerable, right? And you've shared that and I appreciate that. And it sounds like it was also a pivotal point because the other side of that provided you the 4 months that were the most wonderful months of your existence, which is
Yeah.
it's like an interesting dichotomy how that can work out, you
It
know?
is. I wasn't very religious. I would say I wasn't very pious before,
Mm.
but um, I do find myself tapping more into faith and just operating from a place of good intent and then letting everything else fall in line.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and from a clinical perspective, people that or clients or whomever that have spirituality, they're more likely to be resilient. And I mean spirituality in the sense of whatever you believe in, and that could be believing in nothing, whatever. But I think that well, I know that when people have spirituality, when they believe in something that's greater or bigger than them, there is a life satisfaction part that comes into play,
Hmm.
and it is a resilience factor. And so I'm glad that you were able to experience that, and that that's something that worked for you. That's great,
Yeah.
and
I
I'm proud of you for doing that work.
thank you. I get sad sometimes when I think about like, damn, what if I was
Yeah.
successful and I wouldn't have been able to experience life in this beautiful way?
So you're glad to be here.
Um, I feel purposeful.
Do you ever feel like um, those feelings where you want to hurt yourself now, or
No,
no?
no, I don't. It's funny because now I think of like, yeah, you know, it would be crazy if I'm driving my car and I get hit by a truck. It's like I'm like, nah, I want to be here, and I'm extra cautious doing extra other stuff.
Mm.
Like I went on a hike with a friend the other day. I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? Like it's like a 3 foot, it's a 3 foot wide path, and like
Yeah.
it's a drop down through trees and in the water. I'm like, Ryan, no, this is not where you
Yeah.
need to be.
Hmm.
But it's just one of those like now being on this journey and just going out and experiencing new things. You know, it's like really been enjoyable and I'm really discovering who I really am, not
Yeah.
only who I thought
You
I
get to
was.
feel your feelings.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you know. But it's life is so beautiful. But you said something. You said as a clinician, from a clinical aspect.
Hmm.
Can you tell people a little bit more about why you are? I would say I don't want to say why you are validated or no. Your credentials for you to be able to speak from that aspect.
Oh, I'm a licensed clinical social worker. Um, so I've been in the human services field for 13, almost 14 years. When I was working in New Haven, I realized that I felt like I wasn't smart enough. I felt like I needed to know more to be able to work better with our young people and our families. And so I went back to school. I got my master's in social work. I did all of my clinical hours. I passed the test, and I'm very grateful because I think that being able to learn and participate in this realm that I'm in now, I can not only work with young people directly, but I also get to coach people that work with young people. And we often, I know from experience that clinicians or whatever credentials you have, that's not always the end all and be all. Like, you are not understanding of everything just because you have a bunch of letters after your title. It's the experience and having relationships with young people. And so I love being able to talk with people and navigate those situations. And just if I can just be an added layer of support and help to help staff better work with young people, then my day is complete. Even if I get like one or two out of five. I'm 2 for 5 in a day is great. No, but in general, I just think that having those conversations are so important. And so, and as professionals, also, um, it's hard work, that people do, and sometimes you do have to have an outlet just to be able to talk through. Because I think historically, people would say, "Leave your shit at the door, and then you come to work and do what it is that you have to do." Pardon my French, but we recognize that the best parts of us we bring to work, and so sometimes that means that's the most difficult parts of us too. And when we're experiencing negativity or frustration, we deserve to be heard and talked about and professionally developed and understood. And so if I can create that space for people, then my day is complete.
All that being said, I described somebody else that was on this podcast that works with us as being the most genuine person I know. You are probably the most caring person I know.
Really? In life ever?
Yes.
No.
No, you truly embody everything that the work we do stands for in like in a real way. And I mean that from my heart. Like even with us, there's a certain student that we have in common,
Mhm.
and he was able to explain to me what you meant to him, and it was deep. It was real. He was like, why he has so much love for you. He's mentioned like he was like, oh, just some days, man. I don't.
Is this JT or A?
Yes,
Oh,
he was
I
like, just some
love
days, man. I
him.
just wouldn't.
He's so cute. He's my kid. He's my
Yeah.
kid.
He was like, I don't want to be here, and I would just go sit and just talk with her about everything. He
Yeah.
was like, man, I would just be there for the whole day. I do my work, and it's just
Well, sometimes you just meet people or kids or whatever in life or at work, and you forge this connection. And sometimes it doesn't happen with like all of the people that you work with, but um, there are certain kids, and again, I think it's just organic where you just love them. So you love all of your kids,
of course, of
obviously,
course.
but there are some kids that stick around for more.
Mm-hmm.
They want to. They're like, wait, I'm not quite done with you yet. I still want to hang around and have this relationship
Mm-hmm.
with you, and it's just so wonderful to watch. He's so cute, and he's. I guess he's not. I mean, I guess I can't say that. I still say that to him. He's like kind of a young man now, but he's. Oh, it's just so wonderful to see them grow and just do all the things. And even if they're not as successful as they want to be, being along with them with the journey is very important.
Yeah, and two things. One, Mike always says like this whole chipping away at the rock thing, and I used to struggle with that. Being I don't have too much experience in this work, where I've only been there for 5 years, and sometimes you need to see how a kid turns out 10 years later to understand
Yeah,
what effect you really had on him.
that's right. Yeah.
You know, and I say that because like you obviously knew this kid from years ago, and just see him now. And like you said, people might not be as successful as they want to be, but
Hmm.
life's not over yet for him at all. And I
No,
plan,
it's not.
I feel like he has so much more great things to accomplish. But even in that, things could have been so much worse if you weren't his safe space,
Yeah.
and you were that.
Well, my mama says all the time. She's like, you're an only child, and she's like, I was always, and she was always very present. Both my parents were. Um, but she says it took a village. It took my grandparents and um, camp and Sterling House and my friends, and it takes a village to raise people. And I think that sometimes we put a lot of we put a lot of pressure on people to just like do the right thing and do whatever it is you have to do to get through it, or the parents is like what they have to do. But if you could just be a, a present person in somebody's space for a while when they need it, just during that season, even, it could be life changing. And they'll always remember. I remember certain people that were in my life
Yeah.
for just a short amount of time, but they helped create who I am, for better or for worse. And I think that's important.
Did your dad connect you with Sterling House or your mom?
Um, I think it was just like a community center in our town that one of them took me to. I can't remember exactly how I landed there as a kid.
Because I can't stop thinking about you talking about going there and then learning karate.
Kempo.
Kempo? What is
hmm
Kempo?
It's a division of martial arts. I think I got to be a purple belt, whatever that means. So lots of like pinions and whatever. So I'd like to think that my reflexes are good. I mean, I'm not a master of martial arts
If I had a
at
ball,
all.
I'd throw one at you right now just to test it out.
I can see you coming from right here. No. Um, yeah, I just, I think when you're enriching humans, the point is to expose them to as many positive experiences in life as you possibly can, because eventually there's going to be plenty of negative experiences they have to endure. And so I think the idea of being able to help them find self-confidence in different areas is so important. It makes you a well-rounded individual. You might not be good at, you might not be like very genius or very intelligent at one or two things, but if you can navigate the world in many different realms, um, just being compassionate, understanding people, um, I think it's really helpful to be a well-rounded individual.
I completely
You know.
agree with you because that's what allows me to have multiple conversations with a wide variety of people. And along with being just genuinely interested, but like all those different experiences like you said, they mold you into
Mhm.
realizing that you're capable.
Mhm.
You don't have to just fail at one thing
That's
and
right.
say, "Oh,
Yeah.
no, I can't do it." Maybe you might not be able to do that,
That's true.
but you can do these 10 other things.
It exposes you to the idea that, you know what, maybe this wasn't for me, but there's other things that I could be good at, and I think that feeds into your self-esteem and your resilience.
Yeah, I I struggle with trying to, I would say, put that into like formal documentation because I feel like with the work that we do, that's something I want to make an emphasis on how I work with kids because that's one of my focuses, just bringing them into new spaces and
Mhm.
having new experiences so that in turn will make them think in different ways.
Mhm.
Um, so I definitely want to have another conversation with you in the future about that and how to incorporate that with the work that we do.
Okay.
So you said you were in you're LCSW, right?
Mhm.
What was the toughest thing in your journey to become one?
There's a lot of uncertainty that was happening at the same time. So I finished school in 2017. I finished my master's in 2017. Um, at the same time, the school that I was working in New Haven, we lost funding, and so that shut down. And I didn't know what was going to happen next. And so the message that I had been given was, you know, get your certification in school social work, at least, do that. And I'm so glad I did that because then it afforded me the opportunity to work at Trailblazers and Stanford Academy, which were both Doman schools at the time. Um, and so I was able to do my clinical hours there, right? And then those schools had to shut down, and my dad got very sick. It was like all within maybe like 18 months, all these things happened, and so my dad got very sick, and so then I was like going back and forth to the hospital, and all these things were happening, and you don't, and again, like when you're in it, you don't quite realize the windstorm of what's going on around you. But God was really good to me. He put me in a place that was better than I ever could imagine because I did finish my clinical hours then, and I was able to study. I didn't study very well at first, but I figured it out, and I think when you have this goal in mind in your head, um, but life is still happening, sometimes one fuels the other. I think if I was complacent in my life, maybe I wouldn't have been as driven to do what it is I had to do, you know? I knew that I was experiencing hardship and I was like, this is something that I can do and reward myself with and get and accomplish in spite of whatever it's going, whatever was going on at the time. And yeah, I was very, very grateful, especially because I passed it on the first time. And I think, from what I understand, a lot of people don't. And I'm not a super smart person, um, but
Sounds like you figured out the studying thing though.
I, yeah, I like to study. I don't like to take tests, but I like to study. So yeah, it was looking back at it. I'm not sure how I did it, and I think it's because God brought me through. It's like that footprints poem, It's like when you think that you're alone because you only see one set of footprints, and then God says, "That's when I carried you," and He carried me through.
Okay. It's nice that you mentioned it as like one thing fueling the other, because some people would see it as some people, but I sometimes see it as distracting yourself.
Could be. There's healthy distractions, though, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's why I say that's a good spin because I think it's in a real way that is positive because sometimes you need to take a break. We tell people all the time if you're not ready to process certain emotion right now, you don't have to right now, but you can get back
Hmm.
to it and you can still keep living life.
Yeah. Yeah, and it probably was a distraction, but it was the healthiest distraction that I needed
Yeah.
during that time.
Oh man, we deal with a lot of people that have some really unhealthy distractions. So I I think I hear
That's,
where you're coming from.
I mean, everything ebbs and flows. I'm not going to say I have wonderful, healthy distractions all the time. I don't. But in that time, it worked, and again, it was something I didn't know that I wanted or I needed, but
Hmm.
it was the best thing for me.
Well, I'm happy that you were successful in graduating and passing that test because I think, oh, people that don't know, Ashley, can I just be open about that? Ashley is my clinical supervisor. So you've been a great help to me in the conversations that we do have when we review things and discuss possibilities. That's what I mean by like you are like the most caring person I know. Because even when I do mention kids that you don't know, I feel that you have this internal desire to still help them in the best way that you can. Where with JC, how you just took out 2 or 3 hours of your day to sit with her, and that doesn't happen often, even in the work that we do.
I mean, it should. It
It should.
should. Yeah.
It should. I mean, even when you talked about being big on home visits, where I need to do a better job with that. I need to, especially if a kid is struggling the way that they are struggling, a new environment or their safe space is what I need to go create. And
Hmm.
that might speak to how you became JT's safe space. Like it's not only just the school thing. You can wherever you're at, I know he feels safe, and that's because you've met with him in different places. That's my assumption.
Well, I think I mean, I really love that kid. He's my kid. He's my kid.
Um, all that being said, how do you handle conflict?
Better now than I used to. I actually look forward to it. I think it's an opportunity for growth. It really is.
I see.
Otherwise, life is boring. You're just like, and I love getting along with people and being nice and all other stuff. But I think that there's opportunity and growth and conflict. That's the only place for opportunity and growth is in conflict. Because otherwise, you don't learn anything about yourself.
That's very true. I used to avoid a lot of conversations that I knew were going to be difficult. But the strategist that we work with, Deborah Hertz,
Hmm.
she gave me a book called Crucial Conversations.
Oh yeah,
Gave me a lot of
she's
skills.
such a smart lady.
She's very
Mm.
bright and she's very direct, and I love that. I think
I
that's
love
the
all
best
the
thing.
things that she does.
She'll
She's
t-
very
she'll
smart.
tell you about yourself.
Yeah,
I love that.
yeah, yeah. Hmm.
But her giving me that book is it's made me like you said, I'm now looking forward to those conflict situations to see not only just put my skills to the test, but see if I've really grown and challenge the other person's train of thought. I'm not saying that they're wrong or anything like that,
Hmm.
but if you're not open to other people's perspectives just out the gate, then I want to find out why. Why do you feel so right about that? I don't know if that's petty or not, but I'm here for that.
Petty?
Yeah, I mean, cause like I feel like I don't want to say I'm right, but challenging somebody on why they think the way they think. I guess I'm only saying that because I had a recent exchange with somebody where I kept questioning what they were saying because they weren't asking me questions, so I was asking them questions, and it turned into something else, and they got so upset, and I just remained calm in the conflict that they tried to fight me, and I don't I wasn't upset or anything like that, so it was very confusing.
Sometimes it's good to have what I've heard are called meta moments. So when you're in the midst of that, it's okay to pause and just say like, can I just recognize what's happening right now? I think you're mad at me. I've done that. I have a friend who I don't know how to describe her. She's one of my oldest friends. She's a wonderful human being.
What's her name?
Nope, not going to do that. But I think that she could be very challenging sometimes. And so I'll stop and say, okay, I think right now you're like really mad at me. You're really mad at me. What's going on? And then she just like lets it all out, and I think it's wonderful because at least we get to like stop and talk about it. You
Oh
know?
my god! You know what's so funny about this is that I had a conversation with somebody, I'm not saying names, and they said I asked them, "What do you feel like is like? What do you do to get back to a safe space in your relationship with your friend, right?"
Hmm.
And they were like, that's a tough answer because knowing that person, I feel like they would just call me and tell me, I think you're upset and you gotta tell. I don't know what I did to upset you, but everything that you exactly just said is exactly what they told me.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I mean, it's also so refreshing because I mean, it's there's nothing more awkward than not recognizing how awkward something is. Like then you're just both standing there like it's so awkward. So you might as well just say like, "Wow, this is fucking awkward." Like what happened? Can
I,
you help me
I
understand
think that's dope.
where I went wrong because I don't want to do that again or I don't want you to do that again, whatever that looks like. But I think I love transparency. It's so refreshing. Mm, I love transparency.
It's like coffee to you.
Yeah, well, sometimes I'm not that good at it, but I just think it's a beautiful thing. You just lay it all out there.
Yeah. And I guess being people pleasing, you don't. I used to people please, and I used to not lay it all out there. I used to overthink what I was saying. And Deborah called me out on that. She was like, sometimes you just gotta say what you need to say
That's
and
right.
deal with the
Yeah.
shit after.
Uh-huh.
And
Because you know what that's called? It's not called conflict. That's called a conversation.
yes,
Yeah. And people who I think people please see it as conflict.
yes,
And most people who are not people pleasing, they just see it as a There are plenty of people that will willingly go into any controversial conversation. They're fine with it. Um, and I just encourage people to do that more. It's like you just
say what's on your mind.
say
And
what's on your
we'll
mind
figure it out
in a
after.
respectful way, an intelligent way.
Yeah, that's very important too.
Yeah.
Got to mean that we gotta keep that respect in line.
Hmm.
Um, there's a section I always do on the podcast. I talk about the Book of Human Emotions by Tiffany Watt Smith.
Okay.
Do you know what the pavement is?
The Paysman?
The pavement.
Paysman.
The pavement. DEPAYSMENT.
The Paysment?
Yes, I think that's how you pronounce it.
I've never heard of that.
It's a feeling of being an outsider or being disoriented from being in a foreign land.
Okay.
Have you ever felt that?
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, so the town I grew up in back in the 80s was it was pretty segregated. I think I don't have like a better word for it. Obviously there was no segregation, legal segregation, but they practiced redlining. And so most of the people of color lived on the south end and most of the white people lived in the north end. And so my mom, she taught in the south end and she didn't want to be like right next to the place of her employment. She wanted to be able to kind of separate herself, I think, psychologically from just like, coming home from work and going to work, which I think is a healthy thing. And so then back then, you were not supposed to buy in that certain part of Stratford if you're a person of color. And so my parents had to switch real estate agents because when they were buying a house, the real estate agent told my dad, I don't know why, he kept showing them places in the South End. And so the real estate agent said to my dad, I don't understand why you want to live here anyway. All your people live in Bridgeport. And so, they respectfully switched real estate agents. And so I grew up in the North End, which was mostly white. And so my school, which was in the 80s and the 90s, was mostly white. And so while I sounded like them, I did not look like them. I don't think my culture respect was reflective of the people that I went to school with, and so I think I know I did feel like an outsider most of the time, and that was okay. I wasn't upset about it. I think I just recognized it for what it was. Again, I was the only child, so my best friends were books and PBS. My dad was too cheap to buy cable. Um, uh, yeah, so for a long time I did. Probably throughout high school, I joined track, and so I felt like that was a place of belonging for me. And then when I got to college, I found my niche. I found my diverse group of friends who, and I remember growing up. I remember watching The Cosby Show, which I know people have a lot of feelings about, so I won't go too deep into that. Um, but I also watched A Different World, and that show was so important to my child. Again, when we talk about like different things raising people, A Different World was integral to my childhood. I was so excited to go to college and meet people and meet brown people and people who like to read like me. Like this was so exciting for me. Um, and so when I got to college, I was very fortunate that I found my group of friends. And so I don't know what your original question was.
No, you answered. I think you you flowed into that perfectly because you just kept answering questions that were popping up in my mind. So
Okay.
I enjoyed
What
that.
was your original question though? Because I want to make sure I
Have you
answered it.
experienced the pavement? So you talked about experiencing that
Yeah,
growing up,
separation. Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
you also went into like what I was gonna ask is how that played into your identity as a woman of color growing up with a bunch of white kids
Mm-hmm.
in the North End, where you said you found your identity or you found meaning in shows like The Different World, what it meant to be black and not just a certain type of black, and The Cosby Show as well, despite what people have to say about it, there were some good morals in there, you know what I mean?
Wonderful.
So
I
it is
mean,
what it is.
jazz, education,
Yes.
just everyday family dichotomy situations. The idea that, we weren't represented on TV
Yeah.
unless we were drug dealers or police officers. Literally, I don't think there was any show in the 80s or 90s that had black people that weren't either drug dealers or police officers. It was like we were so typecasted.
Mhm.
So to be able to see people of color who are just doing random everyday things, who
Yeah.
had good professions and raised families, that representation is so huge, and people really underestimate the power of representation.
It's
They don't. You really can't understand it unless you're a person who wasn't able to experience it.
yeah. And like it's it's not shit. I used to get frustrated with but you really have to see it to
You have
believe
to
it.
see it.
You have to.
Yeah.
And the irony and all of
It's
that.
modeling. It's like any childhood experience, everything that you're raised on is modeling.
Yeah.
Love, relationships, education, the way you interact with people. We're animals. We learn through modeling,
Yeah.
and if we don't have that in front of our faces, unless we're drug dealers or cops, what does that mean for us?
And I love that. And I think that our most recent podcast episode, I had a conversation with one of my friends, and we were talking about learning through anybody. And one of the things we spoke about is like learning positively from a crackhead. And I couldn't, but you just
A
hit it on the
person who
head for me.
uses crack.
Okay, yes. So a person learning from a person that uses crack. You're too caring. But he was like, yeah, but you can still learn from them. But I think people learn the most from modeling, like you said. So you can a person that uses crack could tell you, don't grow up to be like me. But it's more powerful seeing somebody else that modeled a feeling of overcoming of or just being a positive influence rather
Because
than,
yeah,
you know?
because a person's not modeling if they're not living that life.
Yeah.
It's I mean, it would literally be hypocrisy, you know. You
Hmm.
can't learn from that. You have to see people in front of you. Like my parents. My parents woke up every day and went to work. You know, they regardless. I know my dad. Um, he had some struggles back in the 90s. Um, and but he woke up every day and went to work, you know. And he always came home by 5:30. He was always, my mom would joke and say, I wish your father would just go somewhere sometimes, you know. But he was a work and a family man. And and growing up that way, that really made me who I am. Like, you know, there's integrity in that, and I think that, to me, I think there's integrity in that, and I think that's important.
I agree. This sounds like you left you a very, very strong foundation
I like
through
to think so.
through modeling.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, Shout out to him.
Hmm.
When was the last time you cried?
I think this morning.
What did you cry about?
Well, I cry about a lot of things. I don't cry often.
But are you willing to share?
Mm. Oh well, today was Sunday, so I remotely watched church. So I think there was probably something in the message that got me going.
Okay. Do you remotely watch church every Sunday?
Since the pandemic, yeah, I grew up Baptist,
Hmm.
so sometimes shout out to my pastor. Shout out to all my church family. I love y'all dearly. And sometimes it's hard for me to show up on time for church and then be present for the 3 hours that it is. And so it's like easier for me since the pandemic to be able to watch online, and I get the same message. So
That's
it's
very
always
true.
good.
The
Hmm.
message is the message. There's a I went to this convention with my ex, and one of the ladies that runs it is a pastor, and she said something that was like really resonated. Where I still say it now, and we say it to each other every day. Um, and she talked about like having intent and not hoping for a good day. So she doesn't say good morning. She says morning be good. So,
It's like the person first narrative that I, yeah, okay.
but I enjoy that, and when I got that message, it meant a lot to me. I switch it up every now and then, like morning be amazing or morning be whatever, or like even like morning be good, travels be safe. It's like you you put the power over those actions or
Hmm.
over whatever is coming. I don't
Yeah.
I don't hope it's gonna be a good morning. Morning be good.
Yep.
Um, who or what in your life makes you smile?
I just think people are so funny and fascinating. Um, I think just like the relationships I have with people. I think people are they really are. People are so entertaining. And I'm so grateful because a lot of my friends and my family and the people I work with, they're really complex and intelligent people. And there's so much humor that goes into people when they're really smart. And I'm so grateful to be around really smart people. Cause y'all like some of the things that I experience on a day-to-day basis. I mean, I never watched Seinfeld, and when I did, I didn't think it was like that particularly funny. But there was like humor and like that continuity and like things that I guess people that really appreciated that show. But I appreciate the humor and like continuity and like people just being people. I think they're just so funny. I
Mm,
don't think well, whatever. I didn't think Seinfeld was funny, but I think real life is very, very
it's
funny.
very entertaining with the
And
right
you and
people.
I both have a coworker who comes into my office now and again and who regularly tells me about myself. And to me, it's just,
He's a funny.
He's just so
He's
ridiculous.
a funny guy.
And there's so
He's a
many
funny guy.
people like that. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like they just how blessed can you be to just have people in your life that just like walk in and just say random shit? It's
And
wonderful.
I think, like you said, the continuity and the humor is
Yeah.
it's my favorite part
Yeah.
when you see that person again at whatever time.
Mhm.
And it's life is beautiful.
Mhm.
What does self care mean to you?
Um I love running.
Okay,
Yeah. Yeah, to me running gives me all the things, the endorphins, the dopamine, the like exhaustion that I need to keep going. Um yeah, I think running is like the epitome of my self-care.
that's nice. When was the last time you ran?
This morning, 2.5 at Orange
Okay,
Theory.
okay. Oh, you got money too. Going to Orange Theory?
No, it's not that much. It's like $100. I mean, if I could spend $100 on like food and hanging out with friends, I could spend $100 on Orange Theory.
Well,
Yeah.
I ain't got it.
And that's
So
self-care too. Financial wellness. No, honestly, financial wellness, I think it's so important to make sure that you live in a space that you feel like you can afford.
yeah,
I like saved for a house. I want to because I knew that rent is more expensive than what I can afford in Fairfield County. Um, being able to pay a mortgage, being able to pay my bills, like waking up on a payday and paying my bills is like the best feeling in the
it's
world. To me,
refreshing.
that's self-care.
Yeah,
Yeah, because you're literally, quite literally taking care of yourself. Um, so being able to just like budget and like do all the things that you want to do and then save because fortunately and unfortunately money is very important to your existence, so to be able to be responsible in that area I think is very important.
it is.
Hmm.
I still work on that. I just transferred some money to my savings today, so I know what you mean by that saving. That feeling is very good
Hmm.
when you live inside your means, and it's just a great feeling.
Yeah, it
But
is.
sadly, I don't say sadly. I get to feel that feeling every 30 days because that bill gonna come back. But whatever.
Yeah, but you get paid twice a month, which is beautiful, you know. Just
Yeah,
gotta budget.
yeah,
You
for
gotta make
sure,
it
for sure.
flow.
All right. Oh, one question I ask is, I keep saying you're the most caring person I know. When was the last time you had to check yourself because you cared too much?
Personally, very recently, professionally, I think I've done a better job at creating that boundary because I've done it longer. I think in my profession, I've had more experiences where I've had to learn how to navigate that boundary.
Hmm.
Um, but but personally, and the original question was again, what was it?
Last time you had to check yourself because
Yeah,
you cared too much.
yeah. Personally, I had to check myself because I think when you have this like training hat on, when you're a therapist, like you naturally engage all these communication strategies and these boundaries and the protocols and professionalism stuff like that. But then when it comes down to you as a human being and your personal relationships, all that stuff goes out the window. And so you have to be able to recognize, like, huh, am I being too nice? Am I being taken advantage of? Um, am I looking past signs that I wouldn't normally look past? But I'm doing it because I see what I want to see. Um, and I think I do that regularly. I probably see what I want to see. Um,
Do
but I just think that hope is like such a beautiful thing, though.
you hope that you're not?
Or you just hope. You hope that you're living to your best existence. You hope other people living to their best existence, and sometimes you feel yourself, and sometimes people feel you.
Did you feel like that comes from the expectations you put on other people?
I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know how to answer that question.
Alright.
I wish I had a better answer.
That's okay. You don't have to answer for everything. It's just a journey.
It is a journey. Yeah.
Uh, This next section that I have is called Feel This Way.
Okay.
I'll say a word, phrase, or statement, and I want you to tell me what emotions, thoughts, or memories it sparks.
Okay.
You ready?
Yep.
The first phrase is clinical supervision.
I'm supposed to respond how now?
How does that make, what is that when you hear that phrase, what thoughts,
Oh, I'm
emotions, or
excited.
memories? Excited?
Hmm.
Why?
I love it. It's so weird, but I feel like that's like the best part of my job. I love coaching people. I love coaching people because I know how important that is to me.
When it comes to coaching people, what is a skill that you often find yourself using?
Um, oh, just giving people a safe space. I think in the work that we are in, we don't always have safe spaces. We think we're in a safe space, but even sometimes when we're by ourselves, like we don't do a great job at creating that safe space for ourselves. We beat up on ourselves, or um, we're getting cursed out, or a staff member is not getting along with us, or whatever. And so I think just being able to create a safe space where you can just really reflect on your own practices, with yourself as a human being and with other people. That's so important. It's hard work that people do in this field, so I think it's very important to have that safe space.
And you definitely, from my own experience, you definitely do that. My example would be when we were talking about a certain situation and you gave me some good advice, and I said, okay, thank you. I need to do better with that. And you said, what do you say? You said, don't say that. I said, and you said, you're doing good. You don't have to make it seem like you're not doing a good job. And I like that. I appreciated that.
Yeah,
Um,
I meant that.
I know. I know. The next phrase or name I want to say is Eric Hampton.
Well, that's my dad.
How do you feel?
Aw, very blessed.
Can you give me one of the best memories you have with your dad?
Um, so my dad was a man of many hobbies, and so I think I don't know if it's like the best one because we had so many good ones, but one of the ones that comes to mind is he loved gardening. And so when I was younger, nobody was into the idea of having a pet, even though I've talked about this twice now. So clearly, I really wanted a pet. But anyway, so I didn't get one, but we would go out to the backyard together, and he had created a vegetable garden and then like another garden that had flowers, and so my task was to be able to find the earthworms, and so I would get the earthworms and I'd put them in this planter thing. And so he would commend me on like gathering. I mean, it sounds weird, but he would commend me on like gathering. I was probably like 4 or 5. But it was something that we did together, like just being out there. And he's cultivated that in me again, like in my community in Stratford, where I live now. He had a community garden, a plot in a community garden. And after he passed away, I got this like letter saying, "Hey, do you want to keep this up?" And I did. And so I have this plot in a community garden, and it was in 2020, after all of the crazy things that happened. um, I was able to go out there and claim it, and it was probably the best thing, one of the best things that's happened to me in my entire life. I got my hands in the earth. I saw all the earthworms again. I planted all the wonderful things. I met amazing, beautiful people, especially because 2020 was when all the riots were happening, and white people love to garden. And so I was out there with the white people, and we were all together, brown, black, Hispanic, like whatever. And it was just like, it was just this wonderful community, this oasis of people. So he continually brings me back to my community. And he was a big community person. He loved pouring into, like, his job was to be able to get funds to fund local businesses in Connecticut. You know, he was a very big community person. Um, and so if I can continue to do that in his name, I think that's wonderful.
I love that. And I listen. I got two green thumbs, so this summer, if you need help with
Yeah,
that
Don
community
told
block, I
me.
got you.
Don told me.
Tell
Yeah.
Don to stop telling my business. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Um, the next word or phrase is Yukon.
Huskies.
I ain't go to Yukon.
Oh, that's so disappointing. You see? Then I
That
have nothing else to say to you about that.
that was a bit judgmental.
You don't know. If you
I'll,
don't know, then you just don't know. I don't tell you.
all right, let's move on.
Okay.
Okay. The, the next phrase is graduating to inmate status.
Graduating to inmate status?
Mm-hmm.
That was Ebony's probably take on something. I was never an inmate, but I did work in a prison.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, give you a little background. She said something about when she said she would be like, Ashley, something didn't work out. I see somebody.
Oh. Oh. Uh, I don't know how to touch on that respectfully. Yeah, so I mean, I think to be transparent, when I was working in New Haven, I had a lot of students who unfortunately ended up in the prison system. And so I have, when they go away, I like to know where they are and if they're okay. And it's been years, and it's probably a weird thing, but you know, when you love kids, you want to know what's happening to them, regardless of whether they're in a bad situation or not. If they're still alive, which some of my students aren't anymore, you just want to know where they are. And so I think to her point, some of them have graduated to a, a, a place, unfortunately, that they should not be in, which is being incarcerated. And so when I see their headline or their mugshot or whatever come across in the newspaper, it hurts me. And so I'll call my friend who has connections with DOC, and I'll say, hey, like, where is so and so? Is he okay? Um, are they getting what they need, or is it really that bad, or are they in seg? Are they in the gang unit? Are they in Gen Pop? Are they getting mental health? And she's not always able to answer those questions, obviously, because all of that, they're a protected population. But you just want to know where your kids are.
And she honestly mentioned that because of the passion that you have for your work.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, it's hurtful because you when they're 12 and 13, you go to their houses and you sit on their couches and you hear their story and you share this experience and this relationship, and you love the hell out of them because you know them and you know what they've been through, and you think to yourself, if somebody had helped them, maybe they wouldn't be in this situation. So when they're not 13 anymore and they're 21 or 22 and people stop caring less, all I can think about is what I knew about them when they were 13, and how people should have loved on them a lot more back then because they wouldn't even be in this situation. And it just sucks that when you're a 21 or 22 or 25-year-old person, people don't have as much sympathy for you anymore because you're an adult. You're supposed to do the right thing. But the world has beat up on these kids in ways that people really could never, ever
Yeah.
imagine unless you've sat on their couch with them and had that conversation. So sometimes it's just nice to know if they're just safe.
That's real. Um, the last phrase I have is thank you.
Thank you.
How do you feel?
I feel grateful, thirsty.
I'll get you some water after this. I
And
got
this
you.
is a really nice plant. It's not real, is it? No, but it's really beautiful. But I thank you for having me here tonight, and um, I hope I did this whole situation justice.
Oh yeah, I have one last question for you because this person, your friend, somebody asked me to ask you this. What drives you to do the work you do?
Waking up in the morning. I wake up every morning and I'm just so grateful to participate in the life that God has created for me. And I'm hopeful for whatever He has for me next. But I'm so grateful that I find excitement in what I do. I mean, you work. If you think about it, there's 24 hours in a day, right? There's 8 hours that you sleep, 8 hours that you have to yourself, and then 8 hours that you work. And if I could spend a third of my life doing something that is so, uh, it's just so wonderful. Like, I'm so grateful. I am.
I say that's beautiful a lot, but I think that is really beautiful. I love that word. Also because I feel the exact same way as you. I don't feel like work is work. I look forward to going there every day. I don't wake up with like feeling. No,
Hmm.
I always look forward. Every day is different. Another opportunity to try to love somebody or give somebody the resources or the information or the perspective they need to become a better version of themselves.
Hmm.
Um, I'm more than appreciative. I don't know. I can't find the word right now, but for what being able to work where I work and do the work that I'm able to do,
Yeah.
it means a lot.
There's this quote on my wall that I have, and I'm not like a really big quote or decorations person, but there's one that I have on my wall that's really big. And so when I wake up every morning, I see it, and I'm probably going to misquote it. They say it's by Pablo Picasso. I'm not really sure if it was him or not, but it goes something like, "The meaning of life is to find your gift. The purpose of life is to give it to others." And so, like, you wake up in the morning, and it's like, you go on this life with this purpose, but then you realize that if you're only doing it for yourself, then what's the point? You have to spread you like we're social beings.
Hmm.
We're meant to interact and to love and to depend on each other. Not in a codependent way because that'd be weird, but like if you can just like wake up every morning and experience your life with other people in a positive way and influence people or just like I just I think that's the whole point. It's a gift.
It really is.
Hmm.
I love that quote.
You said
Thank
that
you
was the
so.
last one.
That was the last question.
Oh, okay.
I'm not gonna press you into another question. I
I
just
told
want.
you I believe in transparency.
I
No.
want. I just wanted to say thank you for being here. Thank
Mhm.
you for taking your time.
Thank you for having me.
And that you're a beautiful black woman inside and out.
Do I get to bring that candle home as a consolation gift or
That's actually a gift that somebody made for me. This lady
oh,
that she,
okay.
Tender Time
So it's not
Candles.
for me. It's all right.
No, yeah,
I
no.
do like candles in case you want to compensate me.
I will get you a
I'm
candle.
just
I'm gonna
kidding.
get I'm not, listen. I'm gonna get you a candle from Tender Time Candles. They make those candles.
Tender time candles?
Yes,
Oh,
it's a
sounds
somebody that
sophisticated.
started their own business during the pandemic, and they said they specifically made that candle for me. From I had wanted somebody as a guest here a couple weeks ago,
Mm.
and I'm gonna get you a candle, and I'll have it for you after Christmas because I think they're busy right now.
And thank you again for sharing your journey, your mental health journey.
Of
I
course,
think as a person and as a brown person, it's not always easy to share that, and I think that's important because other people will hear that and they will reflect on their own experiences with that, and it's an important message to get out there.
I hope to inspire somebody to be their most authentic self.
Mhm.
On how I usually end this podcast is with a poem. So
Okay,
uh,
poem it up.
there you go. Actually, this poem was like it means a lot to me because I was into becoming who I am now. I say my first step was getting the help that I needed.
Hmm.
And the second step was sharing my story and accepting myself. When I this was the first open mic I did, and this was the poem that I first shared.
Okay.
Um, so it goes: Life is a game of runs as I battle addiction. Thoughts of unmade thoughts of unmade decisions. I lie awake conflicted. How dare I push for a rate when I've hidden stress, depression, and resentment, all while lacking conviction. Am I missing the friction that varies the degree of difficulty in my days? How essential is anxiety? What do intermittent challenges heed other than growth and sporadicity? Who am I to lead? I barely put together weeks. Home has been a constant state of dissonance for me, a lack of direction that stems from juggling beliefs. Some people are meant to be, or are we nothing at all? I waver losing sleep. In those moments, I'm reluctant to read, internalizing Dubois, Doyle, and Nietzsche. Why I need my wants, why I want my needs. How do we teach patience and perseverance while playing hot potato with accountability? Those that burn their hands bear too much without necessity, too prideful, all in the name of regression. What hurts worse is our lessons are deemed transgressions. Whenever we get hip, society flips and leaves us, as they culturally appropriate a newfound niche. So watch your step. This is a journey for men, not boys lacking the tools to finish transitioning. P.S. I was one of them, backed into a position where all I saw was the end. I felt suicidal. I would either do or die on a lifeline. Dreams of being higher up, both thoughts sedated by being high enough. This is something to hold us.